for the rest of today, what I'm going to do with you is work through a particularly interesting kind of genetic pattern called gene interaction. Ready? Ready to go on? Okay. Ready? I'm going to skip the section on linked genes first. I will do that in term 4, week 1. That is still also in your promos. Okay? So I'm going to do epistasis first because there's a little bit more reading to do. Come, let's go. So in your previous lectures to today, you have always learned that one gene affects one trait, right? One gene may have 2 alleles, and they affect maybe one trait like height of the pea plant or Mendel, for example, right? But actually, in fact, most traits are influenced by more than one gene, okay? And when 2 or more genes come together to influence the final outcome of one single trait, we call this gene interaction. So we're not looking at one gene, 2 alleles, what's in the play, we're looking at 2 different gene loci, and we're looking at how they interact together to affect one trait only, okay? Okay? One clue that we're looking at gene interaction would be when you look at the results of the outcome of the cross, it will look like Mendel's, but it will not be exactly Mendel's ratios. It will be modified Mendel ratios. Okay, then that will be a clue to you that you're looking at gene interaction. I'll show you later as we go along. Okay? So, gene interaction that produces new phenotypes. Let's take a look at it. One of the examples would be the comb of a cockerel. Okay, the comb shape of roosters are actually due to the interaction between the alleles of 2 genes. So you have one trait here. The trait is what kind of comb shape you have. One trait, agree? But it's not a monohybrid thing. It's actually controlled by 2 genes. 2 genes interact together to affect the outcome of one trait. So if you see roosters next time you go somewhere, these are called walnut shapes. This is called rose. This is called pea. This shape is called single. Don't ask me why. Okay? Alright. Okay. Yeah, so if you see guys with hair like that, you can call them single. Alright. Let's do the cross, okay? Now, so you have over here, you crossed a pea comb and a rose comb. Now if you look at it, you think a monohybrid easy, right? Pea cross comb, then it's no monohybrid, one trait, then you cross 3 is 1 ratio. But you realize when we do this cross, pea cross comb give you walnut. Okay, then walnut. Codominant. Codominant. Never mind. If it's codominant, it's hetero. Then hetero cross hetero should be 1-to-1 ratio, right? But that's not what you see. When you pea cross comb, you get walnut. When walnuts, okay, so these 2 assuming they are pure breeding, pea cross comb, you get a hetero, okay, go walnut. But you hetero walnut cross hetero walnut, hey, you get funny things. You get walnut 9 walnut is to 3 pea is to 3 rose is to 1 single comb. Very weird. Okay, definitely cannot be monohybrid inheritance. Cannot give you this kind of ratio. This ratio looks like Mendel's, in fact. But where are my 2 traits? I only have 1 trait. 2 genes affecting 1 trait. I'm looking at gene interaction. Okay, so looking at the genetic diagram, it looks possible if I would do it this way, right? Pure breeding rose comb, pure breeding pea comb gets my hetero walnuts. My hetero walnuts, if I draw it out, this is what I get. Interesting. Okay, 2 genes affecting the outcome of 1 trait. Okay, right? And you take a look at it, what we are seeing is a particular kind of interaction. If you have 1 big R and 1 big P, together you will give you the trait of walnuts. If you have 1 big R and one big R, right, at least 1 big R, and you have 2 small P's, you get rose. And if you have 2 small R's and at least 1 big P, you get P. And if you want to be single, then you're homozygous recessive. You notice it's very cute, alright? Okay? So this shows you it's a different kind of things that's happening. You're not getting Mendel's ratios. It's not 2 genes affecting 2 traits, but 2 genes affecting 1 trait. Alright? So they have asked before, don't be too worried. It's in your TYS if you want to take a look at it. They will help you. Look at the hints they've given you. Right? This gives you rose. This gives you pea. This gives you walnut. This gives you single comb. Alright? So can be done, don't worry. Understand? Alright? Okay. So this is the one that's fairly straightforward, right? Very straightforward. Now this is something called epistasis. It's a little bit more different. Okay? Now, first a footnote. For the focus of epistasis, there are a lot of possibilities because real life is real life. Many things happen in real life. The focus of this is I will be showing you a series of ratios to explain the different types of epistasis. You do not need to know what type of epistasis. In other words, there are different types of epistasis which come with different ratios. You do not need to memorize them. Okay? In fact, this is in the syllabus. It says you are supposed to be able to interpret and explain the data given. You do not need to memorize the expected ratios for the different types. That notwithstanding, I would say it's good to kind of be familiar because the ratios gives you hints to what kind, if you need some help to memorize, some help to explain what you're seeing. Okay, slowly I'll show you this. Okay. In epistasis, what we're seeing is that one gene will modify or mask the phenotypic expression of another gene. So normally dihybrid inheritance, this gene does this phenotype, this gene does this phenotype independent of each other. But in epistasis, this particular gene will mask and influence the expression of another gene. We call this epistasis. Okay? You won't get new phenotypic classes. Actually, the total number of phenotypic classes will decrease. So remember 9, 3, 3, 1, there are 4 different phenotypic classes. They are typical Mendelian ratio for dihybrid crosses. Here you may get it down to 2 or maybe even 3 classes. Okay, we'll see. So number of phenotypic classes will decrease from a 9, 3, 3, 1. Instead of 4 phenotypic classes, you may have 3 or 2 classes. Okay? Okay, now what are the words we use? Let's use this word properly. The gene that affects, that overrides the other gene, we say it is epistatic over. Okay, we don't say it is dominant over because the word dominant, we reserve it for alleles of one gene locus. There are 2 alleles in one gene locus. This is dominant over the other allele. But now we're looking at epistasis. There are 2 gene locuses. This gene locus affects this gene. We say this gene locus is epistatic over this gene locus. And then the one that is like lower down in the priority, that one is hypostatic to this. Don't remember hypostatic, just know the epistatic over, okay? So the bigger guy is epistatic over the other guy, the other gene locus. So far, okay? Don't use the word dominant, use the word epistatic over. Okay, so this gene locus is epistatic over the other gene locus. Alright? So these are the 4 types. You don't have to memorize these. In fact, if they ask you, oh, what do you see? You just say, I see epistasis, full stop. Don't even subcategorize it. Okay, because Cambridge does not want you to subcategorize. And sometimes if you subcategorize it, you say it's recessive but she is dominant, then you penalize yourself. So if you know that you're seeing epistasis, no matter what category, just say it is epistasis. Okay, clear? But I'm going to show you the different types so that you can understand why the ratios are different. Okay? Okay, so this is our typical dihybrid. So in epistasis, obviously it's dihybrid, right? You have 2 genes. Okay? Now let's say normal Mendelian double hetero cross double hetero. What is your expected phenotypic ratio? Okay in your mind? Double hetero cross double hetero, expected phenotypic ratio is? You must be very familiar with this, right? Friend with the star behind. Who's helping his friend next door? The friend with the star. Could you kindly tell us what is the expected phenotypic ratio between a double hetero and a double hetero? I assume it belongs to you, but it's nearer you. If it's not yours, never mind. Yes. Very good. 9, 3, 3, 1. Yes? If you have 2 traits controlled by 2 gene loci, right? The 9 will show the dominant phenotypes for those 2 traits. 3 on 16 would show 1 dominant trait and then the recessive. The other 3 on 16 is the recessive and the dominant. And then 1 on 16 will show the 2 recessive traits. Right? Okay? Quite familiar with this? If you know this ratio now, if you see modification of this ratio, you know it's epistasis. Let's take a look. Okay? Let's take a look at this. You love doggies, right? Okay? So let's take a look. Recessive epistasis. Now, in recessive epistasis, when you have a recessive genotype at one locus, you will suppress the expression of whatever alleles is on the other side. Okay, we call this recessive epistasis. So for example, if you have a small a as your genotype for this locus A, on the other side, right, it doesn't matter whether you got big B or small b, it will mask over whoever's on the other side. Okay, so we'll say gene locus A exhibits recessive epistasis over gene B. Or for your case, you just say gene A is epistatic over gene B. I'll show you an example, okay? What do you mean? You see those two phenotypes? Small a, big B, small b. Oh, sorry, big B dash, or small a, small b. In your 9:3:1 ratio, they're the last two, right? 9:3:1, right? Typically, you have 4 phenotypic classes. But when you do a cross and you find, even though I've got small a here, big B this, and my small b, they will both have the same phenotype, because when you have a recessive genotype at one locus, it will mask over whatever's on the other side. Gene A is epistatic, it exhibits recessive epistasis over gene B. Okay, let's use the example of the doggy. Okay, so this ratio is a 9:3:4. We'll see as we do across, okay? Okay, so it's a modified Mendel's ratio. Remember we had a 9:3:1, right? Now it's a 9:3:4. Okay, let's go slowly. This is your Labrador retrievers. Okay? The color of the dog is actually determined by 2 genes, not a single gene. The gene locus B controls the color of the pigment. And if a dog has a one big B, it will be a black dog. It has black pigment. If it has one small b, it will make brown pigment. Sounds easy, right? Straightforward. Unfortunately, because there's another gene that influences the expression of this gene locus, the gene locus E is going to affect what you finally see. Gene locus E is another gene locus, and it controls the expression of the alleles on the locus B. So, if you have one big E on the gene locus E, you will allow the pigment to be deposited, and you will see brown or black dogs. However, if you have small e, right, you cannot allow the deposition of the pigments onto the dog. So, in other words, if you have small e, there will be no deposits of pigment. You won't see black dogs nor brown Labrador retrievers. You will see golden Labrador retrievers, the one we like, right? That color. Okay, so actually they all have a small e there. Okay? And they could have had a big B, they could have been brown or they could have been black. But because of the E locus, they were small e, no pigment which they could potentially have made was able to be deposited. So they all look default base color, golden base color. Okay? Right, so let's take a look at the genetics diagram. You have a pure breeding black Labrador retriever. You cross it with a pure breeding golden Labrador retriever. Okay? And then you made them to get the F1 and the F2. So let's take a look. Black pure breeding cross golden pure breeding. Happy with this? Can? Right? So to be black, you must have at least big B, right? Pure breeding. Then you must have a big E so that you can deposit the black pigment. So you're black. This golden retriever must have small e, okay, and we said that it's pure breeding in this way. You get one kind of offspring here, for example, and this is your F2, for example. This is an example of a cross. Now, if you take a look at it, this is a hetero, right? Assuming this was my cross, okay? I have pure breeding homozygous recessive and pure breeding homozygous dominant. That's my assumption. I get a hetero. Normally, hetero cross hetero gives me a 9:3:1, correct? But let's look more closely at the F2. It looks like 9:3:1, right? If I draw my Punnett square. But if you take a look, these two are actually golden in color, right? Because with one small e there, whether I got big B to give black or brown, it doesn't matter, I look golden. Alright? You notice this? So for the dogs with the genotype small e, there are no deposits of pigment. I can't be brown or black, I'll be default base color, golden. Okay? So we say the gene locus E exhibits epistasis over the gene locus B. In this case, it's recessive epistasis. Because when I have small e, it doesn't matter whatever you have at the B locus. Understand so far? Okay? Okay? So in table form, we don't have it, but it doesn't matter, it means the same thing. Just as I said just now, 9331, to be black, you must have at least one big B for the black pigment, and at least one big E to deposit the pigment. To be brown, you be small b, right? And you must have at least one big E to deposit the pigment. But these guys here, who have two small e, they will all be golden because they cannot deposit any pigment. That's why the ratio is a modified 9331 ratio. It's a 934. Okay? So this is useful. When you see a 934, you get a genus diagram, you count the ratio, say, 934 is very easy, you know, it is actually recessive epistasis, you know what's happening. But of course, you have to go to the story and then work out and explain to them what you see. Alright? Okay. So far, okay? Can you understand that so far? Okay, two genes affect one trait. The final outcome is a modified Mendel's dihybrid 9331. It becomes 934 for recessive epistasis because those individuals with small e, they will have the same phenotype. So you collapse up the last two of the 9331. It becomes 934. So far, okay? Okay, now let's go to dominant epistasis. Alright? In dominant epistasis, from its name, it means that when you have one dominant allele at one gene locus, it will produce a phenotype regardless of what's on the other gene locus. As long as you got one big B, who cares what's on the other gene locus, it will still be the same phenotype. Okay? So, if for example you have one allele big A, and it will suppress whatever alleles you have on the B locus, then we say gene A, small a, exhibits dominant epistasis over gene B. You can just say gene A exhibits epistasis over gene B. Okay, what does it mean like this? You see over here, individuals with one big A and one big B will have the same phenotype as individuals with one big A and two small b's. Because as long as you got one big A at this gene locus, who cares whether you got big B or small b on the other gene locus, you will look exactly the same. Okay, so we say that the gene locus A exhibits dominant epistasis over the other gene locus. Okay, and how does the ratio change? It becomes a 12:3:1. Okay, we can take a look at it using the case study. This is your pumpkin. Babies like to eat this. If you, right? I'm sorry, not babies only. I'm sure people like to eat this too. Just like my babies used to eat pumpkins when they were small. Okay, alright. Okay, so gene W. Okay, so for the pumpkin, the squash, right? Okay, there is a gene W. Okay, locus. Now, gene locus here controls the expression of genes of another gene locus Y. Okay. If you have a big W on gene locus W, you will inhibit expression of alleles on another locus Y. Whereas if you have small w, you allow expression of the alleles of the other locus. Then what's the other locus? The other locus, gene Y, controls the color. So if you have a big Y, you'll be a green squash. If you have a small y, you'll be a yellow squash. Okay? So color is controlled by this gene locus Y. You can be green if you got one dominant Y allele, and if you have recessive small y alleles, you will be green. Unfortunately, there is another gene locus that determines whether you can even express color, which is the W locus. And if you have a big W, it will inhibit your expression totally. So what color will you be? You will be white. Okay? Because with one big W, you cannot even see if you're green or yellow. Your base color is white. You inhibit your expression of color. Okay? So, let's take a look. Can you change this on 23? It's a typo again. It should be a yellow squash. Page 23. Let's try this cross to see, okay? If you're right now very worried, how do I know to be white? They will tell you one, okay? You don't have to like, so what is it? You don't see color. It's white, okay, base color. They'll tell you the base color, okay? Just like golden retrievers, the base color is golden. Right, yeah. So you have pure breeding plants with yellow squash fruits. And you cross them with pure breeding plants with white squash fruits. So just now we established that if you got one big W, right, you'll be white because no color can be seen on the other side. So this is my pure breeding white squash, assuming it's pure breeding this way, and assuming my yellow was homozygous recessive, okay? So my F1 is a double hetero, correct? I expect a 9:3:1 ratio, correct? But what do I see? Okay? Notice what happens. I don't get a 9:3:1 phenotypic ratio. In fact, I get a 12:3:1. Why? Because individuals with one big W, one big Y will be white. Because yes, they could have been nice in yellow, but unfortunately they have one big W that inhibited any expression of color, so they are white. Then these people too could have been green, but unfortunately, this could have been green and this could have been yellow, but unfortunately they have one big W, which inhibited the expression of any color. So if we collapse the two, 9 and 3 together, we get 12. 12 white is to 3 green is to 1 yellow. It's a modified dihybrid ratio. Okay? Because if you have one big W, it doesn't matter whatever you have on the other gene locus Y. Okay? Gene locus W exhibits dominant epistasis over gene locus Y. Can follow so far? Okay? Alright? So the presence of a dominant big W allele, it will mask the expression of any alleles of the other gene locus. Therefore, you collapse down the ratio into a 12:3:1. So far, can? Alright, and this is what it looks like in a table form, which you don't have, but it's the same idea, okay? Can? So you notice over here, these are collapsed up because as long as you go one dominant W, it will inhibit the expression of your big Y allele or small y allele on the other gene locus. Okay? The only time you can see any color is if you don't have the big W there. Okay, so if you see a ratio like 12:3:1, you know that actually you're looking at dominant epistasis, where one dominant allele will mask the phenotype, okay, or mask the expression of the alleles of another gene locus. So far, okay? Now let's explain. So like, why is this happening? Let's explain it, okay? Let's use the squash example. In biological terms, what is really happening? We understand the genetic terms already. We saw that squash color is influenced by dominant epistasis of gene W over gene Y, right? Now what's happening? Gene W and gene Y are actually involved in pigment production. Okay, let's take a look. Allele big W results in the production of an inhibitor that blocks conversion of white pigment to green. Okay, so if you have an inhibitor here, you always be default white. That's your base color. Okay, so all fruits with one dominant big W, they will always be white, even if over here they could have made green or any other color. Okay, right? So let's try. Right? So what happens if you got no inhibitor? If you have inhibitor, you only be white default because you can't go down the pathway, right? Okay, because W codes for inhibitor. Now let's say you don't have inhibitor. You have small w, no inhibitor, right? It means that you can now change your white precursor into a yellow pigment, agree? Small w, you can have that, right? And now you can show expression on the other side. If you have a big Y, then you can change the yellow pigment into a green pigment. And that's why individuals with small w, and one big Y can be green. And individuals with small w, small y, stay as yellow. Okay? Can? Alright? Because big Y codes for the enzyme that can change yellow to green. If you have a small y, means you don't have a functional enzyme that can change yellow pigment to green pigment. Okay, so you stay as yellow. Okay. Third case, we call this duplicate recessive epistasis. Right? In this kind of epistasis, the two genes are involved in a pathway, and the functional products from both are required for expression. It's different from just now, right? Just now different, because just now you had an inhibitor. If it was functional, you have an inhibitor, then you cannot go on, you default white. In this case, you need both products to be functional. In other words, then you will allow you to go down the pathway. Okay? And if you have a recessive allele on either one of the two of this pathway, then you won't have the final phenotype that you want. Okay? Your phenotypic ratio is a 9:7. Dominant epistasis was 12:3:1, right? This one shows you a 9:7. Okay, I'll explain to you why it looks like this. Okay? This is your sugar pea, right? You can find it in florists, they sell its temperate flower. This color is coded by genes that are responsible for two enzymes in the production of color for sugar pea. So two enzymes in the metabolic pathway control the final outcome of the color. Okay, it looks like this. You want to have a purple sweet pea color, you need to have enzyme P and enzyme Q. The functional ones coded for by the dominant alleles, big P and big Q. Okay, because default, this is white. Enzyme P will change it to another compound which is white, but this is a precursor that's required by enzyme Q to change it to purple. You need to have both functional enzymes in order to get the purple one. If you have a mutant on either side, a recessive phenotype on either of this pathway, you won't get purple. Okay? Okay? So for this, we can say that in this case, because it's in this sequential order, we can still say it's epistasis because gene P, we can say it's epistatic over gene Q. Because if you have a recessive mutation here, right, you will produce inactive enzymes. You have no compound for gene Q to form anything. But in this case, because it's white, if it was white, yellow, green, then maybe you wouldn't say that. It's a different phenotype. But because it's white, the phenotype purple is dependent on you having two on both sides. Okay? So, in this case, let's take a look, right? Sorry. If you have one big P and one big Q, that's the only time you can get purple. Because you can proceed down to make the intermediate, which is used by enzyme Q to make the purple. So you must have two dominants, big P, big Q, to get purple. All other cases, right, you will be white. I will collapse down the 331 into this, because as long as you don't have any functional enzyme on either of this, the default will never be the final purple that you need. Okay? Alright? So it's still epistasis. Alright? Okay? In this case, there's another term for it, you can also, but you don't have to use it. You may see it sometimes. When both genes are required to obtain a final phenotype, we can say it's called complementary gene action. These two genes must be there in order for you to get something. Okay, and the ratio is a 9:7. The 9 is when you have one big P and one big Q at least. That will be your 9. All other cases, you'll be default. You can't get the final color that you want. Alright? Can? Alright? Last one. This is called duplicate dominant epistasis. Let's take a look at it, okay? In this case, one gene at one locus produces the same phenotype, which is identical to that produced by a gene on the second locus. What does it mean? Okay? It means that there's duplication. This product for this gene can catalyze this reaction, and this product for this gene can catalyze the same reaction to give you the same final outcome. The phenotypic ratio is a 15:1. Okay? Real study, wheat kernels. Wheat kernel color is determined by two genes that work in a duplicate manner. Okay, what does it mean? You see the diagram here? I think this makes it easier to understand. There's a precursor, which is colorless, and there are two gene loci that code for two separate enzymes, which both happen to be able to do the same thing. Okay, they can change this product into a colored product. Okay, so what does it mean for us? If both enzyme A and B can produce a colored product, it means you need either A or B, and you will still get the colored product. Right? As long as you go on big A, or as long as you go on big B, you will get the colored product. Alright? Okay, so as long as you have only one dominant allele from either of the loci, you will get your final desired color. Okay? So let's use our Mendel ratio to talk. This is your big A, big B, right? If you have this, it'll be a nice colored kernel. Even if you got a big A and two small B's, you will still be colored because you only need one. If you got two small A's and one big B, you will still be colored because you only need one. If there's duplicate effects right now in this particular pathway, you can have either, there's redundancy in other words, right? Only in this case, when you have no big A or no big B, then you're homozygous recessive, you are that one poor individual out of the 16 that happens to be colorless. Okay? And this is a modified dihybrid ratio from Mendel's ratios. This shows you epistasis at work, where two genes influence the final outcome of it. Okay? So let's summarize what we've seen. In this, we see in epistasis, more than one gene will influence the outcome of your trait. So when you look at the question, you ask yourself, check, do you see one trait or two traits? Two traits, then it's not epistasis. Two traits is Mendel's dihybrid inheritance normal. But if you see two genes and only one trait, then we're looking at epistasis. Confirm one, it's just which kind. Then another clue, you look at the different type of phenotypic classes that appear in the F2. You will find often they are modification from the 9331. There will be fewer classes instead of 4 for a typical dihybrid cross between two heterozygotes, two double heterozygotes. You may get 3 phenotypic classes or 2 phenotypic classes like 15:1, 9:7. Okay? So this is your final summary on page 26. This is my typical Mendelian ratio. Right? 9331, if you cross a double hetero, cross a double hetero. If it was recessive epistasis, let's say gene locus A is epistatic over gene locus B, then you will collapse this together because no matter what you have on the B locus, once you have a small a, it will have the same phenotype. So it becomes 934. Recessive epistasis due to having a genotype of small a. If it was dominant epistasis of A, then you collapse the first two together. As long as you got one big A, you will show a certain phenotype, the same phenotype, regardless of whether you got a big B or small b on your second nuclei. Because this gene A is dominant epistatic over gene B, as long as you got one gene A. Enzymes of a pathway, right? This is your ratio, 9:7. You need to have both of them in order for you to show a phenotype, right? You must have one big A and one big B in order for you to get the final sweet pea color. So we call that enzymes in the pathway. If you're missing of either one, then you cannot get the final desired color. And the last case was the duplicate gene action we saw in the wheat kernel, right? There was duplication. So as long as you got one big A or one big B, you will show your desired color. Only when you don't have any, then you only show the other color. So it's a 15:1. So far, okay? So this is useful. You do not need to memorize, but I would say these ratios are useful, okay, to help you double check what's happening. Okay. We have a few minutes. Let's try this. I'm going to give you some time to look at it, and I'd like you to try it. Your tutors are around. If you have some big problems, you can raise your hand. Your tutors will come and help you. I'm going to give you all 2 minutes to look at this first and try to figure out what's happening here. How do we know it's epistasis? First of all, there are two genes. Alright? Two unlinked genes, so there are two genes controlling this. Then how many traits are we looking at? There is only one trait. The trait is shell pattern. That is one trait, right? Shell pattern is a trait. You don't see like tall plants with green peas, right? It's one trait. Okay, so two genes affecting one trait, we're looking at epistasis, right? Now what's happening over here? Take some time to take a look at it. Okay? Can we say that? Is epistasis? You do not need to say dominant, please do not say dominant or recessive or gene interaction or anything else. Just say epistasis. It's good you know, but don't write it down. Okay, just say epistasis. Okay, you say the two genes, they control the expression of one characteristic. What's the characteristic? The bending pattern. Okay? A big B slash big B, I'm talking about gene locus. Two gene locus. Okay, locus, big B slash long. This is how I write a locus. So one locus, gene. I won't write gene B, I'll just put it as a locus. So when I put this, it means locus. Big B slash small b. To show that this locus is has two alleles in a dominant recessive relationship. That's how I'll write it. Okay? Alright? Next thing I want you to do is figure out what kind of genotypes give you 5-banded, what kind of genotype gives you mid-banded, and what kind of genotype gives you unbanded. Write it in pencil next to the 3 shells there. Okay, figure out for yourself what is the clues from the next paragraph. Okay. So our first clue is for the first sentence. First sentence clue is one dominant big B gives me unbanded. So this kind of phenotype, I must have at least one big B. So I write there, one big B. Okay? Which means the others, small b, right? Okay. What other clues do I get? Mid-banded, need to have at least one big M. Agree? Right? Dominant big M gives me mid-banded. Right? And then, down here, recessive, M give me 5-banded. Something like this. So now what's happening? In what cases can I show any bandedness like mid-banded or 5-banded? What must I be for the locus of the B locus? What's my genotype in the B locus? I must be small b, right? Because as long as I got one big B, I will show nothing, no bendingness. Correct? So how does it affect? Who's epistatic over who? Who is epistatic? B is epistatic, right? Over gene M. Right? How do I write the rest of the statement? In the presence of the allele big B, no bands will be expressed on the shell. Even if I got one big M or small m on the other side, who cares? As long as I got one big B, I will be unbanded. Even if I potentially could have been 5-banded or mid-banded, I will look unbanded. Okay? Finish the genetic diagram in part B. Try very quickly, just see how would you do the last part then. Can you do a genetic diagram to work out what is the phenotypic ratio of this particular cross? It should be quite fast. When you draw an epistatic genetic diagram is like not drawing a normal Mendelian dihybrid, just that when you get to the end, your phenotypic ratio will change. Otherwise, the top is exactly about the same. So try looking that out. That should take you only about a few minutes to do. How do I work out what is the 5-banded shells genotype? To be 5-banded, I know I must be small b, right? Now, do I decide for 5-banded, am I small b, big M, or small b, small m, small m? How do I know? If you look at the next question, it says there's one type of F1 offspring, correct? If there's only one type of F1 offspring, it means it must have been pure breeding for the M locus as well. Correct? So it's big B, small, big B, big M, which they gave it to you. For the other one, which is 5-banded shell, we know must be small b, and then we'll say is small m. Okay? Alright? And this is your diagram. Check it yourself. Final ratio 12, 3, 1. Draw your own Punnett square. You should be able to do this right. Okay? So don't copy this off, right? You can do this, do it. Otherwise, go online, do it. At the end when you finish, go and check the recorded lecture for the answer. Okay? So we'll stop here for today. When we come back in term 4, week 1, we will do on autosomal linkage. Alright? Okay? So that's all for today.